Ready for a deep dive into a classic.
Sure am.
We're tackling Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People today.
A classic for sure.
You'd think with a title like that it'd be about, well, manipulation.
Right. You might think that.
But there's surprising depth here, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's more about understanding human nature than tricks or tactics.
Yeah, it's not a playbook for, like, social engineering.
Right.
More about connecting authentically, which is something we all want.
Exactly.
What's fascinating is that this book almost didn't exist. Did you know that?
I did, yeah. It's kind of a funny story, actually.
Hello, are you about to drop some lost manuscript story on us?
Not quite a lost manuscript, but
What's the behind-the-scenes secret?
Carnegie never intended to write a book.
Really?
How to Win Friends actually evolved from his adult education courses, his teaching.
Interesting.
It was real-world tested. Years of feedback from everyday people, not just theory.
So it was like a constantly evolving social experiment, in a way.
You could say that, yeah.
No wonder it struck a chord. But people were clamoring for this kind of advice back then, right? Wasn't there a whole survey about it?
Yeah, the University of Chicago and YMCA did this massive study. Took them years.
Wow.
And guess what people wanted to learn most after health?
I'm intrigued. Tell me.
You got it. Human relations, understanding each other,
Makes sense.
even more than money or career success.
That's insightful, but not shocking. Like, we crave connection. It's kind of hardwired.
It is.
Okay, let's get into the good stuff, the actual content of the deep dive. What's a Carnegie nugget that people often miss, even if they've read the book?
Good question.
Something that often gets overlooked.
Carnegie believed you can't change people by arguing.
Oh, interesting.
In fact, it usually backfires. Remember Two Gun Crowley, the infamous killer?
Vaguely.
Even on death row, he refused to take blame.
Wow. Talk about an extreme example. But it proves his point. This need to protect our ego, even when facing consequences, is powerful.
Exactly.
Deeply ingrained.
And it's not just criminals. Even Lincoln, after Gettysburg, ripped into General Meade for letting Lee's army escape, damaged their relationship, hurt Lincoln's leadership in the long run.
So even with the fate of a nation at stake, understanding Trump's criticism,
That's true.
forcing your opinion just creates resistance.
Right, it's
like trying to nail jelly to a wall, as they say.
Right, exactly.
So how do we influence then? Surely there are times when we need others to at least see our point of view.
You're right. And that's where Carnegie's principles come in practical tools for building influence the right way. The first one is simple, but often overlooked. Genuine interest.
Not just pretending, but actually caring about what others have to say.
Yes.
Easier said than done sometimes, wouldn't you say?
True, but it's powerful. Carnegie tells the story of C.M. Naffel, a fuel salesman. Couldn't sell to this big chain store they kept buying from out of town.
Sounds frustrating. So what did he do? Change his sales pitch?
Nope. He changed his approach entirely. He went to one of the executives and asked for help with a debate he was preparing for.
A debate?
He needed to defend chain stores and was genuinely interested in the executive's perspective.
So he tapped into the executive's expertise and made him feel important. Clever. Did it work?
Like a charm. The executive, feeling valued and heard, offered to buy fuel from Naffel without him even asking.
Wow.
Genuine interest trumps a sales pitch any day.
That's a solid takeaway right there. Makes you realize we all want to be heard, not just sold to. Okay, what's another principle we should keep in mind?
This one seems basic, but it has deeper implications. Smile.
Come on, I know how to smile. What's the big deal?
It's more than just politeness. Carnegie argued smiling has a physiological effect on both you and the recipient.
Interesting.
It literally changes the tone, even if it's just your voice on the phone.
Like that phone power training they do, where even an unseen smile comes through?
Exactly. It's about warmth, even if the other person can't see you. But let's not forget something even harder than smiling. Remembering names.
Oh boy, that's my downfall right there. I'm hopeless with names. Any tips on that front?
Carnegie highlights just how crucial it is.
Yeah.
He even shares Napoleon III's system, which was extra, repeating the name throughout the conversation, associating it with features, even asking how it's spelled.
Napoleon III, king of micromanaging names, I guess. Sounds a bit much, though.
Maybe, but the point is, making that effort shows you value the person. It's like the lunch lady who piled on extra food for the guy who remembered her name. Small gesture, big impact.
Building on that idea of making people feel valued, Carnegie's next principle is all about listening, right?
You got it.
Active listening.
And not just waiting your turn to talk.
Right.
He emphasizes active listening, engaging with the other person, making them feel truly heard. You know who was considered an exceptional listener?
Who?
Sigmund Freud.
Interesting. If the father of psychoanalysis valued listening that much, it must be important. But how do we become better listeners? Is it just about being quiet?
It's about drawing the other person out, making them the focus. Think about it. Don't we all feel more valued when someone truly listens, not just waits to jump in with their 2 cents?
I see where you're going with this. So far, it seems like Carnegie's approach is less about winning and more about shifting the focus from ourselves to the other person,
Exactly.
not about manipulation.
It's about understanding that influence comes from genuine connection, not manipulation. And that brings us to another key principle. Speak in terms of the other person's interests.
Finding common ground, showing you understand their perspective. Sounds like good advice, but how do we apply that in a real way?
Take the example of the bread salesman who couldn't close a deal for 4 years. One day, he simply struck up a conversation with the baker about the baker's interests. Not even trying to sell anything, just genuine curiosity.
Interesting. So he put aside the sales pitch and focused on building a connection instead.
Precisely. And guess what? That one conversation, focused entirely on the baker's passions,
Yep.
led to the sale he had been after for years.
Wow.
It's incredible how focusing on the other person's interests can shift the dynamics so dramatically.
Amazing. It makes you realize how often we lead with our own agenda instead of tuning into what matters to the other person.
It's a common pitfall. But Carnegie provides the tools to avoid it. His final principle in this section is crucial. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely.
That sounds like common sense, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just flattery.
Absolutely. It's about genuine appreciation, acknowledging their value, making them feel seen and heard.
Right.
Carnegie shares 2 contrasting examples to illustrate this point.
Okay.
First, an elderly aunt gives away her prized Packard car to her nephew simply because he shows her genuine appreciation.
Wow. Talk about the power of acknowledgement. It seems like she just wanted to feel seen and valued for who she was.
Exactly. On the flip side, he tells the story of a placement counselor who remained friendless because she constantly boasted about herself, completely missing the importance of making others feel valued.
Oh, no.
It highlights the importance of sincerity. People can spot empty flattery a mile away.
For sure.
Right.
So it's about focusing on them, not on ourselves.
Exactly.
It's a theme I'm seeing throughout Carnegie's work.
You're right. It's a fundamental shift in perspective that can transform how we approach relationships.
Hmm.
But what about when we need to disagree? Maybe even change someone's mind. We can't just avoid conflict altogether.
Right. Exactly. How does Carnegie address those situations where differing opinions are inevitable?
He argues that direct argument is rarely effective.
Interesting.
It triggers defensiveness and makes people dig in their heels. Instead, he offers a powerful alternative.
I'm listening.
If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically.
Admitting fault. Isn't that surrendering your position?
Not at all. Think of it as disarming your opponent.
Oh.
When you acknowledge your own mistakes, it's harder for them to attack you.
It's about creating a space for dialogue, for finding common ground, rather than battling it out. Do you have any examples of this in action?
Carnegie tells the story of a man who publicly admitted he'd wronged his son. Their relationship had been strained for years, but that sincere apology opened the door to reconciliation.
That's a powerful example of how taking responsibility, even when it's difficult, can be a catalyst for healing and stronger connections.
Absolutely. And there's another example on a much larger scale, Rockefeller's handling of the Colorado coal strike.
That was a tense situation, wasn't it, with those violent clashes between the strikers and the company guards?
It was incredibly volatile. But instead of fighting the strikers, Rockefeller traveled to Colorado and met with them, expressing genuine understanding for their grievances.
That's surprising. I wouldn't have pegged Rockefeller as the let's talk it out type.
He was a shrewd businessman who understood that building bridges was more effective than burning them. And it worked. The strikers were so impressed by his willingness to listen that they agreed to return to work peacefully.
It's a powerful reminder that empathy and understanding can be incredibly effective even in high-stakes conflicts. This is starting to sound a lot like leadership advice.
You're tapping into another important theme in Carnegie's work. He believed true leadership isn't about commanding, but inspiring. He tells the story of Owen D. Young, a successful business leader who never gave a direct order in 3 years.
Wow.
He led by suggestion, empowering his team to find solutions.
Never gave a direct order. That's a tough one to imagine in today's fast-paced world.
It requires a shift in mindset. Instead of barking orders, phrase requests as questions.
Okay.
For instance, instead of saying, get this report to me by Friday, try, do you think you can have this report ready by Friday?
Subtle but effective. It invites collaboration rather than demanding compliance.
Exactly. And Carnegie also recommends showing the other person how they personally benefit from a task, creating a win-win situation.
So it's about aligning their contributions with their own goals, creating a sense of shared purpose. It makes sense. But with all this talk of understanding and encouragement, is there ever a place for criticism? Because sometimes people need to be corrected, don't they?
You're right, constructive criticism is valuable, but Carnegie emphasizes that it should be delivered with a spirit of encouragement, not condemnation.
Right.
Think of it as helping people grow, not tearing them down.
So it's about focusing on how they can improve rather than simply pointing out their flaws.
Exactly. He shares a moving story about Marie the dishwasher to illustrate this point. She felt invisible and unappreciated until a kind stranger, a hotel guest, told her, "Marie, you do not know what treasures are within you."
Wow, what a powerful statement. To have someone believe in you like that, especially when you're feeling unseen, can be life-changing.
It was transformative for Marie. She blossomed, her confidence grew, and she became a respected member of the hotel staff. It's a testament to the power of believing in people, even when they don't believe in themselves.
It makes you realize the impact a few well-intentioned words can have. But putting all of Carnegie's principles into practice sounds like a lot of work.
It's an ongoing effort, but the rewards are immense. Carnegie argued that by mastering these principles, we not only improve our relationships, but also unlock our own potential for happiness and success.
It's about investing in ourselves and our connections, which ultimately pays dividends in all areas of life.
Precisely. And it all circles back to Carnegie's belief that most people crave appreciation, not criticism. We thrive when we feel seen and valued for who we are.
So how do we put that into practice? How do we become more encouraging and less critical in our daily interactions?
It starts with a conscious effort to catch people doing things right and acknowledge their efforts. Remember that story about the young printer? He was struggling to adjust to his new job, and his supervisor was ready to let him go.
His manager, Mr. Roper, he stepped in, right? And turned things around.
Exactly. Instead of focusing on the printer's shortcomings, Mr. Roper went out of his way to compliment his work, highlighting specific things he did well.
And that changed everything for him. The young man went on to become a loyal and dedicated employee, all because someone took the time to see his potential and encourage him.
It's a perfect example of how a little encouragement can make all the difference. And the best part is, it doesn't require grand gestures. A simple thank you or a well-timed compliment can brighten someone's day and inspire them to do their best.
It's about creating that ripple effect of positivity, right?
Yes.
And it reminds me of that saying, people may forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel.
Exactly. We have a choice in every interaction. We can choose to lift people up or tear them down. Carnegie's work is a powerful reminder that choosing encouragement not only benefits others, but also enriches our own lives.
Absolutely. It's a win-win. Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive. Carnegie's work is full of these timeless principles that are just as relevant today as they were decades ago.
Absolutely. They remind us that human connection is at the heart of influence, leadership, and ultimately a fulfilling life.
Well said. And before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Yeah.
Carnegie famously said, compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake.
It really makes you think.
It does. So here's my question for you listening. What untapped potential might you unlock by applying these principles in your own life? How could your relationships, your work, or even your community be transformed by embracing Carnegie's wisdom? It's a question worth exploring. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the work of Dale Carnegie. Thanks for joining us.